Welcome to the Rex Andrews Show. If this is your first time in finding us and listening, welcome. Glad to have you. If you're a return listener, I just want to say something real quick. Thank you. Just recently in statistics, the show has cracked the top 10% of fastest growing podcasts in the last 12 months. And we've done that in a very record short time. So thank you very much. It's your listening that makes the difference. It's my job to keep you coming back. So we always bring in very interesting and unique stories about the human experience. So today I've got a great one, but before we go there, just a quick little bit of housekeeping. Please subscribe wherever you're listening today, whether it's on the podcast apps and distribution. We're on over 23 of those. So wherever you are, please hit the subscribe. If you want to comment on today's show, please do. It's interactive. And then we're also on social media. Any place that you can find social media, we're there. So anyway, thank you for tuning in, and let's have some fun today and learn a few things. Okay, so today's guest I was really excited about. I have a lot of things in common with my guest. She is working on a new book and very excited about that. She is an expert in her field, and she's an immigrant to the United States. And so that's an interesting part of her story, but the backstory is amazing today. She's doing some great things. We'll talk about how to connect with her on our website and social media. But what I'd like to introduce to you this morning is Amelia Zachary. Good morning, Amelia. How are you?
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, great. I am excited because I have a huge interest in a lot of the things that you are dealing with in your life and being successful with. And that's bipolar. And also now I don't have any experience with rape, but these two are connected in your life. So for our listeners today, what I'd like you to do is go into your life story. Now, we don't need, you were crawling around in the crib, but we would like to understand, how did we get to this point? And I say this on a frequent basis. Life is like crossing a wide stream, and we hop from rock to rock to rock, hoping not to get too wet and hoping not to fall off. But if we fall off, we hop on a rock. So we're all a bunch of hops in this world. So walk us through some of your hops. How did you get here? What happened in your life? And then let's, dig deep.
So I was born and raised in Malaysia. That's where I'm from.
Okay.
And I now live in Lexington, Kentucky. But a large turning point in my life was when I was raped. I was 19 years old. I was in college. I had dreams. I had all these ambitions I was about to accomplish, but being raped, that was all turned upside down and taken away from me, because I experienced people ostracizing me, and I went into isolation because I didn't understand that it was rape. I understood it from the whole social script around it, that good girls don't do certain things, and good girls don't dress a certain way, and good girls don't find themselves in certain places. And I found myself doing those things and ending up in those places, and I felt that it was my fault that the violation had occurred. And so having that fault on me caused immense stress and trauma. And I didn't understand what it was at that point because I was so young and I didn't have anywhere to go or anyone to tell, because I believe that it was something of huge shame and guilt came with it, that I had to hide it.
Okay, so let's back up a step or two. Where did this occur? Was this here in the United States or was this back in Malaysia?
This was back in Malaysia.
Okay, and you were in college, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Were you part of any organizations like a sorority or other types of groups and organizations in college? I mean, what did your social life look like that got you into this situation, quote, situation, where you felt like you were, like this was a bad event? Well, obviously a bad event, but why you felt this happened to you?
It was one of those, when you go into college, your social life is booming, right? That's when I started making friends, and I started socializing and partying and doing all the things that typical college students did.
Absolutely.
And it was nothing out of the norm. However, I thought I was being smart, and one night my drink was spiked and I had no idea. And I ended up on the other end, finding myself violated.
So tell us a little bit about your family. Did you have family to turn to? You talked about being isolated.
So that's the thing. I came from a very I'd say a very good family, a very tight-knit family. We're very close, and we're very probably on the more conservative side of how I was raised. And like those things were true to how I was raised, where good girls dressed a certain way, good girls did certain things, and good girls crossed your legs, and good girls didn't get yourself into situation with bad company. And at that age, what was bad company? You know, in the age of rebellion, in the age of your youth, I thought that I was being with people I was having fun with.
Right.
And now, obviously, retrospectively, I can see now that they were bad company, and my family was right about it. And so, but in that situation, in that time, I was ridden with shame and guilt, and just so immensely trapped in a situation. I did not have the courage, nor the skills or tools or knowledge, any kind of wisdom to get me out of it at that
Wow.
point. So I did not tell anybody. I actually didn't tell my family till like in the past year, which
Oh,
was
wow.
almost 20 years ago.
Oh, my goodness. So, all right. So let me understand a little bit more because I'm trying to add in the human experience here. Do you have siblings? Was it just did you have sort of a nuclear family with mom and dad and siblings? What
I
did your
had
family look up?
we had there were four of us in my family, and we're one of those huge families where we're interconnected with all the extended family. I
Okay.
would call my cousins as my siblings too.
Sure.
That's how close we were. That's how
Okay.
close our family was. And yet there wasn't enough for me to come out and say something had happened, because I myself did not believe that something wrong had happened to me. I thought I had done something wrong. It's like a child had stolen candy or something.
Right.
You wouldn't say, because I thought that I had done something wrong. And so I kept it to myself and hid it, because I didn't want anyone to know the shame that I brought to my family.
So let me ask you this question. So when your family got together, because families do, that's right, we all get together and spend time. Was it something that was like eating you on the inside that you
Oh,
needed
for
to
sure.
share? Okay.
For 20 years, I didn't feel like I needed to share, but there was this icky feeling whenever I was around my family. I felt like I was the black sheep. But there was something I was hiding that they'd never know. But if they found out, they would be so disappointed and humiliated that I had
Hmm.
done something like that. It was only recently, in the past year or so, that I accepted that that was a violation.
Wow. So,
For so
wow.
many years, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I know when anybody experiences trauma and things have happened to me, there's always a period of denial. I didn't have why did this happen to me? No, this. And so we go through those stages of denial and we don't manage it. So looking back now, because obviously we can't retrack history, how would have your parents would have acted if you, or your family would have reacted if you would have told them, say, the day after, the week after, the month after, the heck, the year after? How do you think they would have responded back then, knowing what you know now?
Honestly, I still can't tell, because I'm so far distanced from the incident now, that when I told them, it was of shock. When I told them recently, they were shocked, and they were disappointed that they weren't there for me. They were
Okay.
disappointed that they couldn't do anything about it. But I think the distance in time and space had given them a little bit of how do you say, they're more comfortable with it, not comfortable with it. They
Right.
were less angry. There was no anger and rage and all that had been taken out of it, because of how much distance has happened and where I am today. I'm
Right.
functioning and I'm having a good life, and they're happy for that. And I think they kind of like let that be in the past.
Wow. I can't even imagine sitting on something like that for 20 years. I mean, that is such a horrifying. I mean, I'm a male. I don't even understand how deeply violated someone would feel being raped, because being raped as a female is much different than it would be for a man. And so I can't even imagine the internal anguish and conflict that you dealt with during that period. Now, um, fast forwarding to after the event happened and you dealt with this denial and you proceeded on with your life. How did you hop over to the United States?
So I met my husband 10 years ago, almost 11 now, when he was working. Well, he met me in Malaysia. And
Okay.
so then we moved around a little bit and we ended up in the United States because he's returning to his home base.
Okay. So it was a marriage that brought you here. Now, between the time that this rape had happened, this horrible trauma, and the time that you met your future husband, what were you doing? Were you working? What was your life like
I
in
was
that period?
I was working. I was very functioning. I went to work. I had a great job. I was in public relations and marketing. And I mean, I got expelled from my first university because I couldn't show up to class because I didn't want to go into the campus and run into the person who had done this to me.
Right.
Or I was being bullied by everybody, by my friends and my so-called friends at the time. I was being bullied and they were talking about it and making it my fault and blaming me and calling me names and all those things. I refused to go to classes and I ended up failing out of my first university that I had worked very hard to get into.
Wow.
And so I finished off at another university and I got a degree, and I with through the tribulations of going through trauma processing. I was processing trauma in a very maladaptive way. I was
Okay.
self-destructive.
Okay.
I had a lot of suicidal ideation and a couple of attempts, which I guess now fortunately I was incompetent and it didn't happen, and I'm
Okay.
here. But when I met my husband, when we started dating, we very quickly moved in together because he was working in Japan, and I let everything go to be with him. And in that time of us living together, I guess he was able to watch me. No one had ever actually been watching me so closely until we were living together, and he realized that all these self-destructive behaviors were unhealthy and not normal for
Okay.
me even. And so we started receiving treatment. He
Okay.
encouraged me to get professional help. And that's when I found my diagnosis of PTSD and bipolar disorder.
Wow. Okay. So, did he go to any counseling with you or in therapy, or was it
Oh,
your individual you?
well, it was supposed to be my individual therapy, but because of all the stigma around mental illness, I refused to go to it. I said, no, I'm not crazy. I don't want someone looking into my brain. Like, no, there's nothing wrong with me. And
Yeah, I
then
understand that.
he sat with me through the first 3 or 4 sessions, and he did the talking.
Right.
He did the talking for me until I was comfortable enough to take up the sessions by myself.
Wow. Well, the reason why I connect with this part of the conversation a lot is I'm actually bipolar myself. I was diagnosed almost 20 years ago. The DSM was different back then. I was diagnosed as a bipolar 2 hypomania ADD. So it was like an entire menu and buffet of description. I too have had a journey with that. Most people, when I would meet them, they would never know that I was bipolar. And so I'm dealing with my own little world and the backstory there. So I get what you went through. So, what was your reaction when you got the diagnosis?
I was shocked
Okay.
because I also had the misconstrued idea of what bipolar was.
Right.
It's what you see on TV, what you see in the movies, where someone's laughing 1 second and then snaps over and starts being sad or angry in the next. And that was the idea of crazy,
Yeah,
quote unquote.
absolutely.
This is what people said, that people who had bipolar were crazy, were off their rockers. And it took me a while for the therapist to convince me by listing out all the data he had collected from my behavior and my thought and behavior patterns over a significant amount of time, that I realized that, okay, I understand what it is now. It's not exactly what's on TV. And that's the whole thing, right? There's so many different types of bipolar.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
And
if you
and
fast
that's the
forward to,
one,
let me
yeah.
share this one. If you fast forward to today, I had this diagnosis, 18, 19 years ago. I never exactly remember the date, but I know roughly. I mean, I could probably dig it up, but the DSM has changed so much. So my diagnosis currently now, because I, currently always see doctors about my condition, and it's a brain chemistry issue. It's
Yeah.
not this weird thing. But I'm now considered bipolar 2 undefined because I don't fit the traditional descriptions of the ups and downs and the peaks. I run really high all the time. People always thought I was a type A personality, but no, I don't even fit all the characteristics. So they just kind of say, we don't know. We're just going to call them undefined. Now, what
And
was
that's
your,
the thing, right? That's
yeah,
the
go
thing
ahead.
with mental illness. It's invisible. And
Exactly.
it's not like we can like put in a probe and then tell you, well, with this blood constitution, this means that you have this disease.
Exactly.
It's something that takes time. It takes consistency, and even then, it's so difficult to define.
Right. Well,
And there's no,
go ahead.
I was just saying there's no one size fits all diagnosis
No,
when it comes to mental illness.
there's not. They say now that in studies that about 6 to 7% of the people out there have some sort of mental disorders. Okay. And that higher than that, they guess and estimate that up to 20% of people have some sort of mental illness. Now, it may not be severe, but the interesting thing about this is bipolar has lots of triggers when it comes on in people's lives. It can happen at any particular point in time. Yours was trauma related, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Walk us through a little bit, because a lot of times it's just an onset, just like you'd have type 2 diabetes onset, or you'd get any types of fibromyalgia, meiosis, if you would get autoimmune disease, whatever. A lot of people deal with things that just come on. Yours was trauma related, right? So
Yeah.
walk us through learning about that, because do you feel like you had the bipolar tendencies right after the rape, or did it evolve?
So so my diagnosis was given 8 years after the rape. And
Okay.
so what happened was we looked back and talked about my maladaptive behaviors, and it began after the rape because I was a very high functioning. I was a star student. I was confident. I was running for student council, and I was doing all those things where I was on the top of my game. And so
Absolutely.
there
I
were no
understand that
symptoms.
100%. Leader of everything, front person, a speaker out there, put yourself out there. Yeah, I get that. I know
So
that.
I was all of those things, and I was very driven, and I had no symptoms, nothing that would show that I had bipolar before then. And then after the rape, we looked back at the data from how my behaviors evolved over the years. It showed us that I did have bipolar disorder post the rape. And so bipolar disorder is we have a genetic I definitely must have had a genetic predisposition to the illness,
Mm-hmm.
but it did not come to surface until there was immense trauma in my life. For some people, I guess you could have the genetic predisposition and just never have it manifest itself.
Uh-huh.
And so mine only came with trauma. I don't know, like a lot of people may have it just pop out of nowhere. And so that's the other thing. It was hard to see that it was what it was until I was in therapy and someone was actually monitoring my behaviors and patterns.
So you were probably about 27, 28 when you started the
Yeah.
therapy? Okay.
Yeah.
They talk about it a lot in I mean, I study this a lot because, you know, 99.9% of the people I bump into would never know. It's something I have to share with people. And in my cases, I think it's a gift because I'm allowed to do things because of my brain function and my energy levels that most people don't. And so I really looked at it as a gift. Now, I didn't for a long time. There is a period of denial that everybody goes through. And I'm sure you experienced that amazingly.
All the time.
All the time. And there's this, I don't want to be crazy. And I learned in employment situations and stuff like that, I was such a high performer. But if you shared that you were bipolar, that's it. You were under
Yeah.
a microscope and it was downhill from there. And I can look back, and I won't name the companies and stuff or the managers and stuff, but absolutely, after I shared that I was bipolar, it was within 6 months I was gone. It was like they were looking for something.
That is
Now,
terribly unfortunate because that's why I want to have these conversations. I interview in podcasts. I want to be in these conversations. I wrote this book. I want to be part of the conversations that normalizes mental illness. That
yes,
we can talk about it as a medical condition and not have the stigma and taboos that are tied to it, which is
right.
really unfair.
It
Like
really is. I've watched this over the last 20 years. And so let's see, how long have you had your diagnosis?
About 10 years.
For 10 years. Okay. The understanding physiologically and brain chemistry wise has advanced tremendously. Okay. Like I said, the DSM is so much broader now on this, and there are so many more medications that are available to help, behavior and those types of things. But I don't believe that the stigma has changed.
No, I still see it on TV all the time, and I find it offensive. Like, oh, she's just a little bipolar. And you wouldn't say like, oh, he just has diabetes because he's eating, like he's having trouble off the candy. Like, it's not a joke.
No,
People wouldn't
exactly.
make a joke about some other medical condition, but somehow because of the taboo around mental illness, it is a joke.
You're exactly right. I hadn't really thought about that. Nobody's laughing it up because someone has a congenital heart issue, or they're not making
Yeah.
jokes about you that you're crazy because you're diabetic, or, let's say that you have autoimmune disease. Nobody on TV is going, ha ha, they've got this or that. They really aren't. But you're exactly right. The minute somebody learns about a mental illness, oh my goodness, they're wackos, they're crazies, oh, think of them kind of stuff. I'm sorry for them,
Yeah.
or ooh, stay away from them. So I would agree with you 100% that the stigmas are haven't changed very much. Now there's a lot more education about mental illness, but I don't think there's been an adoption or validation or acceptance.
Yeah. But I do think that we're talking about it more, and the fact that it's on TV a lot more, I don't know whether I'm more sensitive to it, or it is true that I hear a lot more about bipolar now on TV and movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just watching the show the other day, and the character has bipolar disorder. And of course, like it manifests itself in the most dramatic way possible,
Sure.
where like the person is a serial killer in the end. but but I mean, like the fact that it's more prominent, I feel like we're doing something right. People are talking about it. There's an awareness now. The sensitivities around it and the way we're talking about it needs to change, though.
I would agree with that, because I throw up some examples, because I've researched this because I just want to understand it. I just want to understand it at a pretty good depth. They look back based on brain chemistry and behavior of all kinds of people. Winston Churchill was a bipolar, and he was also a flaming alcoholic, but he could also be labeled probably one of the world's greatest leaders when he saved the UK from the Germans. I mean, I have read all kinds of things about Winston Churchill. You look at, they postulate that Abraham Lincoln was probably bipolar. He suffered with really severe bouts of depression. Okay, and from the traditional standpoint, a lot of people, I don't in my case very much, have really severe bouts of depression. That's the typical, oh, my understanding is the ups and downs. So you look all around, they postulate that Robin Williams, the famous American comedian, same thing.
Van Gogh.
Yep. There's all kinds of plus. So the one brilliant side, and this has been documented and people don't understand, there is an absolute connection between bipolar disorder and creative genius. All of the things that I've dreamed up and done, and having the ability to see things different than others, it's because the gift of my brain chemistry. Because as you know, and I'll ask you about it, my brain doesn't really shut off. It's going all the time.
No. Yeah.
It's just going all the time. So how's that been for you? I mean, has that been something that's beneficial, or has it been a detriment?
Well, I do feel like it is beneficial when I love my hypomanic episodes.
Yes.
When they're not in anxiety.
Right.
When they are in a creative, so that's the other thing. There's so many different symptoms that manifest itself in these different episodes. And one I want to make very clear is that I have episodes of hypomania and I have episodes of depression.
Okay.
But I don't live in bipolar 24/7,
Right.
365 days a year.
No.
Because I still live my life. I have these episodes that come and go. And so like in my hypomanic episodes, I'm highly creative. There was a time where And it's the unexplainable kind of creativity. One day I just looked at a drawing and I said, like, I want to draw that. I think I can sketch. And I've never taken classes. I've never been into drawing or sketching or art or of any kind. I picked up a pencil and I started drawing these sketches. And it were realistic sketches. And they lasted the bout of hypomania that I was having then. Never came back again in that way.
Sure.
But this goes to show that the mind does something that is, if I could tap into it, excuse me, sorry. If I could tap into it 24/7, I would like to be in that space where I'm tapping into a part of my brain that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
And I think that is the thing. Like you were naming all these famous people, they're all creative geniuses.
Mm-hmm.
And they're people who have been like incredibly productive in their time of creativity, in the time of their episodes. And that I find I do the same thing. I'm highly functioning. I'm very driven, very hyper focused, and I can get things done the way I wanted to get done, or even better than I thought I could get it done,
Right.
because I was able to tap into that part of my brain. And then I do have major depressive episodes where I'm just depressed for long periods of time. And the thing about depression is people think that it's always the crying in bed and not being able to get out and just crying sad grief about things. Number one, usually there isn't a root cause for the sadness. I can't pin it down to one single thing to say that I lost my job and therefore I'm sad, or I just got out of a bad relationship and therefore I'm sad. Sometimes it's just a visceral feeling that comes over me, this feeling of grief and sadness that I cannot pin to anything, and therefore I cannot process.
Okay.
I can't process it. I can process the thought. If I lost my job, I can process that thought, right?
Right.
I can say like, okay, I'll get another job, or these are the things that I'll need to do to rectify that situation, and I can think my way through it. But sometimes there isn't a source. There's just a deep feeling of sadness and grief and pain that lasts for long periods of time, and those are the times I find myself in bed and not able to function. However, depression also comes in the time where I just don't feel like doing anything, but I'm not sad.
Yep.
I call it emotional constipation, because there's this feeling where I feel like I should be feeling something. I just don't feel like doing anything. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to be around anyone. I just want to be by myself, but I carry on doing my stuff. I take my kids to school.
Yep.
I feed my kids. I do all the stuff, all my responsibilities. I'm functioning. However, that feeling of blah, it's a part of depression, loss of interest in life.
Yeah.
It's also classified as depression.
I can relate to that, because that those moments of mania, the time of mania, I'm like Superman. My energy's off the charts. I dream up all kinds of crazy things. I have to literally write them down in what I call the idea parking lot, because I can drive myself bananas thinking through those things. And I've been blessed with a little bit of intelligence. I wouldn't call myself Albert Einstein, but I'm pretty smart kind of guy. So the combination of super energy and and great high intelligence, it's both a recipe for success and a recipe of
recipe.
Yeah, I can't even talk this morning. Look at this. For the disaster too, because you get addicted, and this is what people don't understand. Even if you're on your medications, and I have learned to accept and deal with, that aspect of it. It's, as if you have diabetes, you take medications for that, or any type of thing that you're dealing with. Even though on your medications, when you have those mania cycles, you can get addicted to those feelings. That super person type.
You
of
want
thing.
them to last it forever. You want them to last forever.
Yeah, I'll get things done like Superman, go through all kinds of just, crazy there. Now, you want to feel like that all the time because it's a great feeling. And it does take time to learn how to manage that, to realize, that's a great thing. It really is. And I look at this as a blessing, but you have to get to a point where you learn how to manage that and realize it's almost like being a drug. And I postulate all the time, because I watch people and I look at their behaviors, and some people who are walking around and probably have never been diagnosed. people my age. I'm 55. And so I'm guessing there's a ton of people in my age category that just never got diagnosed because it was something that you didn't do. I look back at my father's behavior and my grandfather's behavior, all on my paternal side. Absolutely. Pretty much no doubt. Okay. So anyway, it's an evolving science and it's really hard to look at. I even postulate probably that Michael Jackson probably had some sort of form of bipolar because his ability and creativity was just off the charts, genius. Maybe even Prince had those types of things because these are types of people that the distance between normal and their genius is so huge, and it has to do with their brain chemistry. Now, they may not have been bipolar, but I'm guessing there was something that was out of kilt in their chemistry. But my bouts of depression, just sharing my side, and we'll go back to a few things, is I don't really experience it. I just have those lull days. I don't curl up in a ball and go, I can't move or anything like that. I just have days where it's like, not Superman today, and I'm, maybe you go ride my bike or go for a road trip. My family always thinks I'm nuts because I'm like, oh, I just want to go for a road trip somewhere and take off. Well, those are the days that I'm not running at that high mania level.
Yeah.
So tell me, how has it been in your life? How has your husband dealt with, and how does he help you manage your condition and your cycles?
He is amazing. He is like the most amazing human on earth. I don't think there is another one that's like him. So we went through this, we began treatment together. He sat with me and he walked me through the treatment, and he came into treatment also to learn how to cope being with me. And
well, that was really smart of you, both of you, to have him go through that treatment.
Well, that's why I think he's so special, and what we have is so special, that we loved each other so much that we wanted it to work. At that point, we weren't even married. We were just dating, and we wanted it to work. And so we found that this was a way for it to work because he understood that the illness is not me.
Right.
That I am still me with an illness that can be managed with treatment. And so he went with me and he supported me. And to this day, he understands my cycles. Mm-hmm. And like we were talking about having a really high, my problem with that is when I get too high, I almost most certainly drop into a very deep low. So I have to watch myself and kind of manage that. And he's good at watching and observing, and then like, hey, this seems a little off. Like, you think you want to reel it back a little bit. You don't want to commit to too many things, or maybe do you think this is too much? This is going to be too much. And he watches and he understands and he participates in my decision making. That's funny. Which is very helpful.
That's funny that he knew all this before going into the marriage. Most of the time, people don't share those things until afterwards. And so he actually knew that he had signed up for batshit crazy, right?
Yes. And then now he'll have to live with it, won't he?
Yeah. Woohoo. Look what I'm signing up for. Absolutely nuts. Woo. I got to deal with ups and downs.
Like, he's amazing where he like understands the ups and downs. And so we work it's like clockwork around here. I have 2 children. I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old.
Okay.
And we've been very transparent with them because first it was just me and him, and that was easy. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't easy, but it was 2 adults understanding a situation and then making adjustments to adapt, right? Then we had children. And when we live in the same room, same home, there's no way for me to hide my episodes.
Sure.
Hide my irritability, hide my anxiety, or hide my depression. And so we started being transparent with them. Mm-hmm. And since my oldest was 4, we started talking to her and explaining to her about my illness. And so, of course, we do age-appropriate kind of conversations. Like, sure. Mommy feels this way sometimes, and this is what it looks like. And so this is what we need from you. And so we've worked out a formula, a plan on whenever I am in an episode, my children know how to react. If I'm in a depressive episode, my children know that they play in my bedroom the whole time.
Yep.
They know that they get their own lunches, their own breakfast. They do all their chores and no problem. They don't fight in that time, which is, oh my goodness, that is a feat in itself. And my husband jumps in and does all the household chores and does all those things that reduces my stress so that I can get out of my episodes easier.
Oh, that's fantastic. Having a great partner is so important because, I'm guessing you've probably heard this question. Are you on your meds? Did you take your meds?
Yes. Oh, he makes every morning. Every morning, we used to do that thing where he was like the nurse at the asylum. Like,
Uh-huh.
here's your meds, and like, okay, swallow. Show me your tongue. Like, okay, done.
Well, I've never had to go to that level, but yes,
I mean, he's joking. We were
yeah,
joking,
yeah.
but he
It's
makes sure that I'm in line.
yeah. The funny part about the managing it is you have to continue to take the medications to help balance your brain chemistry. I have been on almost a dozen different combinations since the beginning. Tried, and there's so many more choices today than there ever was.
Yeah.
But it would be apparent to family members. Dad's doing this, Rex is doing that. Hey, let's check in. Let's check in and say, okay, are you okay today? Have you taken your meds? Those types of things. And for the most part, I don't think people understand that bipolar does have some side effects as far as, risk taking and just other types of characteristics. But it doesn't impact your emotions as far as being able to be a loving person. It doesn't impact your ability to work. And in most cases, I work tons more and more effective. And you're not really as impacted with all your interpersonal relationships. Okay, so I think there's just this stipulation that people think that you're just really out of control. And like you said, this is helter-skelter person, but it really isn't. So I'm glad that you've had such a loving and caring, and then somebody brave enough to go into a relationship with this. Now, how are you treating your conditions now? Are you including things like diet and exercise and sleep type of behaviors and quality? Tell me a little bit more about how you're living with it.
So I haven't been asked that question in a long time. Now that you say that, I'm like, oh yeah, it's just become second nature now, right? Because
Right.
I've practiced over the years. But of course, like as you know, bipolar disorder has a biological factor to it,
Yep.
which is the chemistry and the chemical imbalances, and that's managed with drugs. And I do drug therapy. And I also do for the environmental factors, I have to keep everything in balance, everything just right so that I can manage when the highs comes to level off the highs and the lows. And so I do things, I keep up with my talk therapy for sure,
Mm-hmm.
where I have learned and kind of adapted the cognitive behavioral therapy tools into my every thought and every thought process. It is just natural to me to think that way now, to catch myself in cognitive distortions and reframing myself constantly.
Uh-huh.
I also do acceptance commitment therapy, which is a lot to do with mindfulness and grounding and feeling your feelings and accepting it for what it is and being able to redirect your thoughts into something that's productive, something that's wholesome. And so I also do a lot of mindfulness and a lot of meditation and connecting with nature.
Yep.
I'm a very spiritual person, and I like that connection to nature and the universe and the world around us. And that gives me a sense of purpose, which I need consistently because I always feel I fall into these traps of depression where I feel like I'm not worth it, I'm worthless, and I have no point of being on this earth or being in this world. But then when I do connect with nature, I feel like I am a little speck in this vast universe, and everything has its purpose, right? Every grain of sand, every drop of water has its purpose, and so therefore I must have something. And I'm at peace at knowing that I don't know what that purpose is, but I'm at peace at being where I am now, being present.
Well, one
And
thing.
so
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No,
I was just
finish
saying, I feel like all these things together draw a big picture of what I have to maintain in order to be stable, to be in a stable state and to prolong my stability.
Yeah, there's one thing I think when you get the mindset, the mindset on this, is that it's past the acceptance. And also it's a perspective that you take. I've worked on, in the best classes I ever took for, you're really so right about the behavioral contributions, treatments that you're working on. I had a therapist that I'd worked with through the clinics and stuff that I've worked with, Angie, I never say her last name right. It's Tiasos Phillips. And she would always say, Rex, don't tell people you are bipolar. You have bipolar.
Bipolar, yeah.
You're not defined by bipolar. And so you have a gift. And, that's when I started to look at this as saying, hey, yeah, it really is a gift. And so people don't understand that the better management of this is when you are doing all those behavioral types of contributions to your treatment. Yeah, it's really easy to pop pills. I mean,
yeah.
When 20 years ago, when I got my diagnosis, it literally was from a psychiatrist, and all his treatment was take these meds, balance your brain chemistry, take these meds. And that was it. That was absolutely the end of the story. And the current team that I work with today, it's all about quality of life and how you're balancing, 9 different aspects of behavior and those types of things. And you have to be mindful. And then the mindfulness is so important because it takes that brain and levels it out to be able to be cognizant, to be in the moment, to be in the moment with your family, in the moment in just going for a walk and being able to observe the things that we all just take for granted, that type of stuff. So I'm glad to hear you say that, because there's so few people that have the diagnoses, because everyone's individual. I believe that brain chemistry is as unique as your DNA or your fingerprints. And I think that as the technology and the science evolves, we're going to be able probably to almost do a brain chemistry mapping like we would DNA. I really believe that. I think it's one of the biggest frontiers in science is the brain and mental health, because look at all the extreme examples we have in our world, amazing artists and authors and leaders and things like that they're just wired differently. They're just absolutely wired differently. So, all right. So fast forward, you've got a couple of kids. Sounds like you've done a really good job of integrating them and their understanding based on their age appropriateness. Okay. Do you kind of have a roadmap planned out for your kids and your marriage going forward, living with this?
Yeah, I don't have a roadmap. I think what has been successful for me, there has helped me with living successfully, which I feel living successfully is living in the present and living, finding joy in what I'm doing, and which is a struggle. If you understand someone having bipolar, it's a struggle to feel the joy and actually experience true, real joy at all times, because I'm always looking over my shoulder for the next episode.
Yep.
Absolutely. So I live in this space where we have to live for the now, and we have to do everything that we want to do now because mommy's feeling great, and let's go out and go for a hike. Let's go do whatever you guys want to do. Go for a swim, go build a snowman, do whatever it is that you want to do now because I'm feeling good, because I don't know when the next episode is going to hit. So I don't actually have a plan, roadmap. I think I live in the day.
Okay.
I live each day as it comes, and I try to be present and be fully there, experiencing every bit of that day that I can.
Well, I'm sorry, Amelia. I set you up. That was a set of questions. I just wanted to see what you had to say about that. Now, let's add in the other element that, gosh, so few have, being a victim of rape. How has that been in this brain chemistry soup that you have? Because that's an added element of stress that I don't have. Okay. And I would guess not very many people who have a brain chemistry or bipolar type issue. So how has that been? Are you still struggling with some of that mental thought process?
Yes and no. A lot more so recently when I started writing my book, and now I'm editing it, and I was just going through the difficult chapters, and it comes back, right? I think I tuck it away in a neat packet far away,
Okay.
hoping that like I know I acknowledge that it's there,
Right.
and it's a packet that I'm not ready to open, or like I don't feel the need to open up. But when I started writing my book, it all came out onto the pages,
Okay.
and all the feelings and the thoughts, and reliving the trauma. And now I think I'm forced to process it, because the purpose for the book has become greater than my fears of the trauma.
Oh, that's great. So have you picked a title for your book yet?
Not yet, no.
Okay. That's a ominous chore. I mean, it just, when someone wants to, because it's hard in a very short string of words to say
Yes, to say what
something,
this book is.
what this book is, and it has to be eye-catching. It has to, hit the reticular activator so we know that it's going to get people's attention. So that's great. So do you anticipate when you're going to have that book out? I mean, we're recording this episode on the 20th of February in 21. Do you have an idea when your book's going to be out?
I don't have a real idea, because I'm working with an editor right now. We're editing the book together, and I'm taking a lot more time than we thought.
Okay.
We're nitpicking little bits and pieces to make sure that I tell the story well. And it's such an important story for me to tell, and I'm taking my time with it. We hope for it to come out sometime early next year, I think.
Fantastic. Well, I'll be excited and watching for it. So tell our audience and listeners, how can we follow you? How do we stay in touch with Amelia?
So for sure, go to my website, ameliazachry.com, and be sure to spell my Zachary correctly. It's spelled a little funny. It's Zachry.
Okay.
So it's ameliazachry.com. And there I have updates on my memoir. And I'm also writing short stories about my life. If you want little insights to a life with bipolar, a life through post-trauma processing and parenting, and my life as an immigrant, I have little stories there to share. And also follow me on Facebook and Instagram, Brown Girl Crazy World.
Brown Girl Crazy World. That's great. Well, I really enjoyed our conversation today, and I appreciate what you're doing, because being someone who's bipolar like I am, it's not something I wear on my sleeve. It's not like I run around and saying, woohoo, I'm bipolar and pay attention to me for that. This is my identity, because it's not. And so it's good that you're out here having these conversations and, speaking up and writing and sharing your thoughts of this, because I think it's something that more and more people need to understand, to have the stigmas catch up with the knowledge. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges, because this is what I think in a lot of ways. And again, this is the world according to Rex, so who cares? But I think that, as you mentioned, we see it more and more in media, television and radio and things and stuff we read. And the understanding and acceptance is getting higher, but the stigma hasn't caught up. There's a lot of that. So the more it's talked about, the more research is done, the more people who are bold enough to step forward, the better it's going to be for all of us, because I believe that there's a lot of creative genius bottled up in a lot of people out there that can be shared with others. And I'm not reaching around to pat myself on the back. I'm just an average goober. I'm just an average guy.
But just being able to be aware of the condition and being able to manage and treat it in order to live a life that's fulfilling and to thrive in your own life and achieve the things that you want to without being stifled by the illness.
Yeah.
And not even knowing.
Yeah.
I always say this, like, if you had a heart palpitation, wouldn't you go get checked out?
Sure.
So if you feel like something's not going right, then like, why wouldn't we just instinctively get our minds checked out?
Yeah. Well, I like your thing about, nobody makes fun of a diabetic. They don't think they're off the charts. So why should we with the mental health stuff? So it's been very informative, and I'm going to have you back, because I'd like to go into a real deep dive on the living post-rape, because I think that's another amazing story. I haven't had the opportunity on my show yet to talk to somebody about that. And I think be very educational for a lot of people to understand the depths of that, because I think a lot of people can summarily think, oh, I get it, but I'm sure none of us do unless we've experienced it. So
Thank you.
we'll call it a wrap today. Thank you. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to sit down and share your story. Thank you for being bold and putting yourself out there. I understand what that's like. It's not like you're going to hear me talk about this topic every time I have a show, but I appreciate your time and your willingness to share, educate, and be a real person, because you are, and you're doing some great things. I appreciate that. So that's going to be it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's going to be it today for the Rex Andrews Show. We appreciate you tuning in and listening. And until the next episode, be safe, be bold, and make it a great day.